How's it going, everybody? This is Dominic Minchella. I am the Kansas City Chiefs co-beat writer for On SI and the host of the Kansas City Chiefs Insider Podcast. Thank you guys so much for stopping in today as we continue on talking about the Kansas City Chiefs leading into Week 3 against the New York Giants. The Chiefs will hit the road. They do hold an 0-2 record, just some housekeeping stuff to begin this episode. But with that, the first 2 weeks, you can't change them, right? And I know I said that this podcast would be the defense edition is it time to worry? That will be tomorrow. In fact, today we're going to be talking about the positivity from all the negative that's happened thus far this season for the Kansas City Chiefs, and it could be happening as quickly as Week 3. As we know, Wednesday, head coach Andy Reid disclosed that both wide receivers, Xavier Worthy and rookie Jalen Royals, will have no limitation during their practice. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just say, you remember me saying this the whole time when we've talked about the Kansas City Chiefs. This offense, this wide receiving room looked vastly different without Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice available. Rashee Rice, you're not going to get until Week 7 against the Las Vegas Raiders. But the report is, the hope is, the prayers at night for Chiefs Kingdom surround Xavier Worthy in hopes that he can play Week 3 against the New York Giants. From what we see today, or during practice on Wednesday, rather, there's positivities when looking at Xavier Worthy potentially returning. And I say potential because you never know how his shoulder could feel from now until game day. Depending and, given that the Kansas City Chiefs are going up against the New York Giants, another team that has begun 0-2 on the season, there could be a world where the Chiefs, or some may argue that the Chiefs don't need to play Xavier Worthy, but I think for their own confidence sake and the way that the offense could flow, it is very, very important that Xavier Worthy gets back out there for the Kansas City Chiefs. We've seen how this wide receiving room has been with Xavier Worthy on the field. Last year as a rookie, he had his struggles, but near the end of the season, he started picking up things that he didn't necessarily get in the beginning of his campaign in the National Football League. And that's due part with experience. And this whole offseason, he's working with Patrick Mahomes, working with the other wide receivers in the room that he shares, and learning from Rashee Rice, just to say the least. Xavier Worthy is arguably the best wide receiver in the room with the exception of Rashee Rice being sidelined. Now that you got him coming back, it could do wonders for the Chiefs offensively. Now, we know that Tyquan Thornton has been a speed threat deep for Patrick Mahomes. We know that Hollywood Brown has been getting the most targets and receptions within the first 2 games of the franchise's season. But getting Xavier Worthy in there, even an injured Xavier Worthy, could be the spark needed for the offense. Now, the only caveat with it is that the defense for the Giants is going to know that Xavier Worthy is not going to be 100%. That aspect, I do think, could hinder the Kansas City Chiefs. But I'm not saying it could limit them. I think that his presence on the field, whether you target him or not, the whole shift of the defensive attention will go to Xavier Worthy if he runs deep. But in return, if you've got Tyquan Thornton, Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jason Brownlee, just to name a few guys that are also sharing the field with Xavier Worthy, if all the attention's on Worthy and he's not going to be able to bring in a reception, you've got multiple receiving options that could come in handy for Kansas City. More so because now, even if you add an injured wide receiver of Xavier Worthy to this roster for Week 3, I do think that he's still the best wide receiving option. Hollywood Brown's not a bad option. That's not to say that he isn't, but I think that what we've seen thus far from Xavier Worthy and the speed and the spunk and the positivity and the way that Chiefs Kingdom and the Chiefs roster was just flowing last season in one-score games with Xavier Worthy as the main wide receiver. I have a lot of confidence that that's just going to kind of be a thing where they pick up right where they left off with Xavier Worthy. Hopefully, this time not being a victim of friendly fire. But if that's not the case, another guy who could very well be coming to the Chiefs roster for the Week 3 showdown is rookie Jalen Royals. And I'm not here to say that Jalen Royals is going to be the end-all be-all fix for this offense, right? He is a rookie. He's a guy that is kind of in the same shoes that Xavier Worthy was in last year. While he's not a first-round pick, he has a lot of potential. So much potential that it's almost like the pressure is on without him even being a part of a single snap yet for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I say that because a lot of comparisons have been surrounded by Jalen Royals and Rashee Rice. If Rashee Rice is out, your best next option is Jalen Royals. You're getting that in a player that's hopefully going to be able to live up to those expectations and help Kansas City on the receiving side of the ball. If there's any positive that come out of the two negatives that we've seen in week 1 and week 2 is that if Jalen Royals and Xavier Worthy are healthy out there on the field, I think the two fastest guys that you've got in the Chiefs wide receiving room without Rashee Rice being able to play, it could really very much benefit the way that the offense runs. Now, there is still very big question marks surrounding the running back room. Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, they haven't necessarily done their due diligence thus far with their part in the offense, but that does not mean that Kansas City can't find a way to incorporate them even more. Now that there's bigger threats on the wide receiving side of the ball, should Xavier Worthy and Jalen Royals both be able to play, I could see a world where Pacheco and Hunt kind of get their bearings back and are able to, get a lot more yardage than 47 yards apiece through the two games. Patrick Mahomes can't be the leading rusher for this game. I think Mahomes' main focus with Xavier Worthy and Jalen Royals both being back on this wide receiving core is that you got to look for those explosive plays. It's something that they have worked on through the offseason. It's something that they've run through with both wide receivers. When we were looking at the tape earlier today, Jalen Royals looked good. Xavier Worthy, he might just have that little safety crutch just because they know he's going to be vulnerable. He's not the biggest guy either, folks. He's a threat to re-injure that shoulder, and that's something that the Kansas City Chiefs can't do. Whether or not they're willing to take risks, I'm fine with. But if Xavier Worthy is going to be the main target and ends up getting hurt further, and this time for the remainder of this season, it's going to be kind of difficult to rely on the likes of Hollywood Brown, Jalen Royals, among other up-and-comers that are trying to make a statement. If Xavier Worthy is able to return with Jalen Royals for week 3, I think that there's going to be a lot of positive takeaways from week 3, and that's something that the Chiefs Kingdom looks to be longing for. They just want to win, man. I can tell, I can see, I'm paying attention to Twitter, and with that all being said, ladies and gentlemen, you should follow me over on Twitter at Dom Minchella. I post and repost every single day. You're not going to want to miss any coverage of the Kansas City Chiefs. You can also follow us over at KC Chiefs on SI, where we post every single story that we've got, analysis, podcasts, everything, game recaps, all at Kansas City Chiefs on SI. That's the place to get your Kansas City Chiefs news, folks. Let me know what you think. This offense could definitely get a resurgence with the ability of having Xavier Worthy and Jalen Royals back in the wide receiving room. With that being said, as always, be kind to one another, and I'll see you tomorrow.